So what is the self? Now that is the question, but the self cannot be described in words. So it truly all comes down to spiritual awareness. We either have it in this life or we don't, as of yet. Like two birds sitting on a tree, one enjoys food and the other looks on without any need to do a single thing. So inside your body you have an ego and the self. The ego chases pleasures of the physical world, while the self calmly looks on, in complete detachment. These birds, that's how they described it in the Mundaka Upanishad. The closest in words is to say the self is simply your awareness of being. Pure consciousness, because that awareness is everywhere you go, during childhood, youth and old age. Always awareness is the only permanent thing. Even in your dreams you are aware. And even when you don't dream, you are aware. But that is trickier to grasp. When we don't dream we say there was nothing. But as it was said by multiple people throughout the ages, in order to say there was nothing, you had to be aware that there was nothing in that very moment. Now that is quite mind-boggling, since it indicates perhaps that the self also doesn't work with memory as we know it. So likewise after physical death, your awareness would be aware of exploring infinity. However, the infinity cannot be explored as long as your consciousness during physical life has been trained in low egoic perceptions. Then the only thing you would be able to do is come back to another body on earth in order to keep exploring egoic existence, which at its core is a perception of separateness, whereas enlightenment is a perception and experience of unity. Our difficulty for now is we consider the nothingness during sleep as something not part of ourselves, so like an event that didn't involve us. But to close that gap and to know it is as an intimate experience in which you would be aware, that would instantly dissolve it forever. Decades of being trained to think you are your name and body, well, there's a lot that needs to be undone on this kind of road, on this kind of journey of spiritual awakening. We would have to feel more and more joy in the realization that this life is not all there is to existence. So whatever happens, it is alright. We will keep going on and on. Just keep seeking the joy of the soul instead of pleasures offered through sense experiences alone, and you'll do fine in spiritual growth. Know the joy of the soul. It is to know everything in all of creation at its source. So how can you not bother with it if you see and know unity that binds everything together? But the physical world is such that it leads us to believe in multiplicity instead of unity. That's what your senses are doing. That's even what your mind is doing to a certain extent. It's turning unity into multiplicity. We can't perceive it, but spiritually we can grasp it. Again, meditation is the way. It helps your mind calm down enough to realize we share the same universal awareness of being. All creatures do. But of course it goes even further, that objects are also part of this field of consciousness, or else people could never dream of inventing something. It came straight from the consciousness of God. At first this seems tricky or complicated to grasp, but this simply explains. Your mind is trained to look outward through the senses, but to see unity, the mind has to sort of, you could say, turn inwards towards itself, even though you wouldn't really be looking at yourself because you are the self, but you're just becoming aware of this universal self that we all share. That is the trick, but meditation is the way. You can say you are already familiar with meditation in case you are still wondering how to do any of this. Every night we sleep, the mind turns inwards, but the problem is we are not consciously aware of this process. So the more we train through meditation while awake to actually focus the mind inwardly and to calm it down enough so we can open up the intuitive side of mind, we suddenly discover more and more wisdom and insight into the soul. If you were to sit at home and close your eyes without falling asleep and to sit there in total silence, You could put on music if you want that sounds relaxing to you, it can help in the beginning. But you just sit there with your eyes closed and simply let yourself totally relax in that state of being. That is the practice of meditation, and the more you notice from experience it calms you down, the deeper you ultimately can go as you keep doing it every day. It would basically be like working out muscles, but instead of growing muscles, you train your mind to become more and more calm and relaxed. It is in the silence God's wisdom can be received. Generally speaking, there's too much thinking and worrying and pondering over physical things going on in the mind, so you can never properly receive any guidance or insights from God to begin with. It was also in this state of sitting still with your eyes closed. The ancients discovered how untamed the mind is. Like the wind, you cannot grab it. It keeps on thinking and pondering out of nowhere. Thoughts invade your awareness non-stop. So they discovered if I remind myself I am not those thoughts, they are not the real me. Slowly they cut the fetters of attachment in their consciousness of all these thoughts, constantly trying to drag their attention in all kinds of directions. Basically, walking this path is a lifestyle, which you don't just do sometimes, it would have to become a permanent way of living, all the way until you physically drop dead, or else it was worthless. Don't be intimidated by this. No amount of effort is wasted on the spiritual path, as the Gita said. Any little improvement towards God can already set up great improvements in your overall physical life experience. So we enter into the path and practice of karma yoga. After all, it means aligning one's actions up with the wisdom of consciousness. It's the only way for most of us, due to how advanced society has become. The distractions are endless for sense pleasures, and many get lost. So the god of death said, "Again and again they walk like sheep into my jaws of death, so I can spit them back out into a womb, for them to chase the fleeting pleasures of their senses. But one who sees through it and gives up on these sense pleasures, becomes entirely non-attached, lives with holy indifference, can escape my grasp and see eternal life, sooner or later." Consciousness will be set free the moment you die, and if you learned about the truth of your soul, it will be a great joy. Even if you sleep and you aren't consciously aware all the time, understand that it's mostly to do with the fact the body has to constantly go to sleep, and your consciousness in a way gets dragged into unconsciousness because of it. That's sort of what we gotten used to. Sometimes you find yourself conscious while your body sleeps, but it can be tricky to experience it all the time for most of us. But still remember, once the body dies, consciousness is set free, so you can explore eternity forever if you know the truth about who you are and no longer feel attached and identified with the physical body and world alone. It is the ego in people that say, "That sounds sad, being detached, that sounds bad, that sounds this or that. If I were to live like how you suggest, my whole life seems meaningless. If I drop attachments from my goals in life, it seems as if I pursued them all for nothing. I did it all for nothing?" No, you have to become wise about this. You are meant to enjoy the journey while you are here, but not be attached to a single thing and expect a single thing from anyone or anything. Just enjoy the journey and know it will come to an end eventually. Again, so it was never a physical life you could find anything of eternal value. That is the fall of mankind in a way, turning our backs towards God. To seek joy and love in this world instead of in the divine cosmic soul. People think if I say be non-attached, it sounds bad in a way, but it's because of what I just shared. It's due to the belief that the physical world somehow can offer you something when it can't. It's like you came down from eternity under some impression. Perhaps I find happiness in physical life, and then you realize this world is a giant mess mostly. I'd rather see God all over again and go back home to eternity. Know yourself to be eternal, not just as a theory or an idea, but to feel it to be true. That is the goal and end of all suffering. That is spiritual growth. Or as I have said before in a video, remember who you are. This is also why sleep exists physically speaking. It is one of the subtle and constant ways all forms of life, in a way, merge temporarily back into the more spiritual side of life. Although usually dreams are about what we have done during the day or in the past, or perhaps some future dreams or worries we hope to realize or think we will encounter on earth. But in that activity you are witnessing literally spiritual perceptions, and yet we think nothing of it. Oh, it was just a dream, is what people might say, never wondering, how does that even occur? I dream I am in another world. Am I currently perhaps dreaming a life of physicality also? And if I die, is it like waking up from the dream of physicality? It is like the evidence is staring us right in the face, yet we completely overlook it. Sleeping and dying are very similar. The only difference is once you die physically, you no longer come back to your body. You might as well be forever in some kind of other dream world, or perhaps incarnate in another galaxy. Who knows? There's so many options of what could occur, and all of them seem to lead to the same thing. This physical life is temporary, so we better look for what is eternal. And if it exists, then we should find evidence of it somewhere within our own consciousness itself. If it doesn't exist, then death means eternal nothingness, which means eternal peace. If there's something, then life goes on, and even greater journeys awaits the soul. So the only uncomfortable and scary thing at first is simply the letting go of your attachments to your friends and family, career, etc. Leaving it all behind sounds sad at first, but in return you either get eternal peace or an even greater adventure awaits. But I can confirm from personal experience, when you are outside the body and aware that you are not in it, you don't worry about physical things you left behind at all. The part that worries is again the ego part of the mind, that wants to hold on to how things are and doesn't want it to change or end. However, mostly understand this is all the same journey for everyone, to come to this realization of their eternal nature, or else you walk the risk of downgrading everyone and treating them harshly. That is again why I want to make it clear to people that being detached, even from their friends or family, isn't a bad thing. We don't mean that we then treat them harshly or don't care about them at all anymore and treat them like trash. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you break the fetters of attachment from your own consciousness that is dragging you all over the place through good and bad times. If you can just perceive the unity and eternal nature of your soul, of your true self, and therefore you start to see it in them and their true selves, then you will never have any need to be attached to anything, because you share unity. So what is there to be attached to? You know that you are eternally together, in one way or another, in one form or another. So yes, look at your family, friends, strangers, etc. and simply know all of them are on the same journey as me, but everyone is on different levels of awareness, and that's alright. But still, don't let someone with a potentially lower awareness drag you down. Be indifferent about it. If they sound like physical life is all there is and they want you to see it that way, it is what it is. You are free to think you are your body alone. Funny enough, society works like that, and so the ancients would also say it is wise to turn your back on the world. Or in the Bible they said, be in the world but not of the world. They are all statements of not letting the overall society and world fool you into thinking that you are something you are not. Ultimately it comes down to asking ourselves, does this idea or information somehow benefit me and makes me feel more in tune with my own soul? If so, then it's right for you to follow it, and depending on our level of awareness, we might always agree or disagree on certain points. But ultimately it's not about specifically following anyone's advice in particular. It is about us discovering for ourselves the truth about who and what we are, and what life is about for us. So right now I'm just sharing with you one way of looking at life. It's the way I've been looking at it, and it has been useful to me personally. Perhaps it helps you out in your journey. Maybe it doesn't, and you would find something else that resonates more with you instead. That is all just fine. But never forget, an open mind is important, especially if you want to receive divine wisdom, which comes about through God's grace. When someone you love dies, they only move the frequency away from you. You can't perceive them with your physical eyes, but they still exist in another dimension, you could say. And so it will be the same for you. Life goes on forever and ever, and will indeed only become better and better once we tune into the divine cosmic soul from which all of creation has sprung. They are all on their own journeys to figure out the unity they share with life itself, and so it is with both of us.